morning friends, and welcome to today's video, and Happy New Year. This is technically the second video of 2020, but the first video was like my rewind or recap of 2019, and that video kind of seemed to get buried by YouTube. So yeah, if you haven't seen that one and you are interested in like my 2019 rewind or recap, then feel free to go check that out. There's a previous video of this one. Well, let me tell you, but first, let's go back. But for today's video, as you can see by the title, I'm going to be comparing flying as an international airline pilot and a domestic airline pilot. And for those of you that are new here, this is your first time watching, welcome. My name is Nick Priest. I'm currently a first officer on the A320. Last year, I was a second officer on the Boeing 787, and then about mid-year, a promotion to first officer. So if this is your first time here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and you'll be the first to be notified when a new video does come out. And also, if you are subscribed and you haven't seen my last few videos, you may be wondering why. Probably because you haven't turned the notification bell on to make sure you get notified when I do publish a new video. So if you are interested in that, turn that button on. And yes, to state the obvious, this is going to be more of a sit down, talk about topic type video in terms of aviation and stuff like that. Just with 2020, wanting to try and keep videos more consistent. Obviously there'll still be vlogs and everything like that. But yeah, to try and keep videos more consistent, every once in a while, if you guys do like it, I'll sit down and sort of talk about an aviation topic or a fitness topic or life topic or anything like that. If you do want to see a specific topic or question covered, comment it down below. Today's video, as I've said, comparing international airline pilot to domestic airline pilot. So first of all, as I said at the beginning of the video, I was a second officer on the Boeing 787. I was so for about 3.5 years. Been on the 320 now as a domestic airline pilot, or primarily domestic airline pilot, for only about 3 months now. I did start the process about midway through last year, but it is a whole big process. Doing your type rating on the 320, then doing your check on the 320, and then I transition sims coming into my airline, and then there is line training. So the 320 is primarily a domestic aircraft, but it is a short to medium haul aircraft, so it does do international flying as well. From Australia, it goes to Australia to New Zealand. I just started doing off to Bali as well. So there is still some international flying, but obviously it's not a long range aircraft, so there's not long flights like what I was doing in the 787, like, you know, to China or to Thailand or to Hawaii. So this is obviously just going to be my opinion. This will probably change from person to person, and also in saying that I haven't been on 320 for that long, obviously. I feel like there's not a simple answer to this because depending on obviously your lifestyle and what you want to do with your life outside of aviation, I think that really varies probably your bottom line answer to this question. So for me right now, I would say that domestic is what I want to be doing. Just getting married a few months ago, domestic really gets me home like every day, whereas international, I'd be going away for 2, 3, 4 days. China trip was quite long. That was like a 6-day trip. Obviously being away that long is not what I would want to be doing right now. So domestic is where I want to be right now, basically. As I said, coming home every night. So let's start with the 787. So on that, I was a second officer, which meant that basically I did not take off or land the 787 unless in an emergency situation, or basically if the captain deems it is better for the interest of safety of the aircraft for the SO to be in a control seat for takeoff or landing. So for example, for that, the FO, first officer, had food poisoning, so then the captain had the SO be in the FO's seat for landing. So that is the difference between second officer and first officer in real simple terms, which is quite common. There are a lot of airlines around the world that is the only way to join the company. So you come into the company as a second officer, and then once your seniority allows you, you progress up through the ranks, first officer. That's probably a different topic in and of itself on that. But yeah, I joined the company as second officer on the wide body aircraft, obviously flying international. I was type frozen on the 787 for 3 years. And then after that 3 years, it allowed me to bid to become a first officer. So for me, it was about 3.5 years before the company released first officer positions for me to bid for and then be allocated one of those. Digressing a little bit from the main topic of the video, but that side note I think is important because for a pilot, takeoff and landing is obviously the most challenging and the most fun part of the flight. So we become a pilot because we want to obviously fly, and takeoff and landing is the most flying you do, because in cruise, your pilot is on. Which segues into another point I will make, because internationally you're doing, say, or for me anyway, doing long haul, I was doing one trip basically a week. So that's one takeoff and landing a week. Obviously I wasn't taking off or landing, whereas a domestic airline pilot, or primarily domestic airline pilot, which is what I'm doing now, you know, you can have 4 or 5 days straight of 2 or 4 sectors. So if you look at what I did last week, for example, so I've got my roster here. So I worked 4 days and now I'm on a few days off. So day 1 was 4 sectors, day 2 was 4 sectors, day 3 was 4 sectors, and then day 4 was 2 sectors. So normally the captain and first officer will alternate. So if you do a 4 sector day, the captain will be the one taking off and landing for 2 sectors, and the first officer will be the one taking off and landing for the other 2 sectors. So comparing that's 7 takeoff and landings in 4 days as compared to an international pilot who would do 1 takeoff and landing in, say, 4 days. So comparing that, an international and domestic airline pilot will do obviously a greater different number of takeoff and landings. So there's no right or wrong answer for that. It just will vary from person to person on what you sort of want to be doing. So for me personally, domestic, I found the day goes very quick because obviously they're shorter sectors. So take off, cruise for a shorter time, then land. You have a half an hour turnaround, so you have to set the whole plane back up. 4 sector day, do that again. So for me personally, I found the days go a lot quicker domestically. But I guess comparing the lifestyle aspect of it, internationally you obviously do a long flight, then you're in an international destination, and then you have 1 or 2 nights there. China, we had 4 or 5 nights from memory, and I guess it depends on the destination, as probably as well as the crew you're with as well, if they're sort of wanting to go out and do stuff. Like Hawaii was an awesome destination because the hotel was right across from the beach, and Hawaii obviously was like 8 or 9 times out of 10 was sunny, it was awesome weather, so you go to the beach, go for a surf, and then come back home. And then when you're home, you're on days off, so you have a few days off and then sort of do another trip again. Domestically, obviously you're coming home each night. It probably just depends on what you're sort of wanting to do, as I said at the beginning of the video, like with your life and your lifestyle or where you're at. So again, for me, I'm loving being home every night because even after work you can still do stuff at home. So for example, Em's dad was here a few days ago down from Brisbane, and I worked in the morning, so did Em actually, she worked in the morning. We were done by, I think it was like about 3 PM, then we go have dinner with her dad. Whereas comparing that to, I guess, international, if he was down here for that period of time and I happen to be on a trip, then obviously I'm just away and wouldn't be able to work and then go to dinner, for example. It just depends on your lifestyle or even the option you have. As I kind of said, some airlines don't give you the option to coming in direct entry as a first officer. The only way to join a company is to become a second officer first and then go through ranks to become a first officer. That's probably touching on the lifestyle aspect a bit. So days off, as I kind of touched on already, international, you'll go on a trip, 2, 3, 4 days, and then you come home, have 2, 3 days off, and then go on another trip. So basically 1 trip a week for the month, whereas domestic, you work 4 or 5 days straight, doing 2, 4 sectors, depending on your roster, then have 2, sometimes 3 days off, and then do it again. So full days off at home are about the same, and then just depending on if you are away internationally or home each night domestically. And I've already touched on it briefly. The flying aspect, as I said, in a 4-day period, as domestic pilot, you can be doing 7 takeoff and landings, over 4 days. Whereas on the wide body, you'll be doing 1 takeoff and landing in those same 4 days, for example. But also a little side note on that, on the wide body, you could do a short international sector. So for example, Melbourne to Bali is a shorter sector. So, you could do 2 of those in 4 days. So you could have 2 takeoff and landings in 4 days. Which then kind of leads into another point we'll talk about, which I guess is the fatigue aspect of it. It's just a different fatigue. It's probably the simplest way to put it. Long haul, they typically are like back the clock or flying through the night flights. So your circadian rhythm or your body clock is wanting to sleep when you are really wanting to fly. So preparing for that, Hawaii, for example, it's somewhere at like 2, 3 PM in the afternoon, and then fly for 10 hours to Hawaii. So for that one, what I found worked best for me is like stay up late the night before, sleep in as long as I could, sign up for work, and then on that long flight, as a second officer, you're obviously augmented crew, so you do get a few hours of crew rest on that flight, which depending on the local time back at home, in Melbourne for example, it really plays a part in whether you can fully sleep on that crew rest or not. And then obviously you land your destination like Hawaii, you get there, we got Hawaii in the morning like 6 AM like Hawaii time, and obviously you were wrecked because you'd just been awake till like 3 AM local time back in Melbourne from memory. And then depending on what you wanted to do, but I would typically go to bed straight away, catch up on some sleep, get up, go to the gym, have some food, go to the beach, because you're really not in a destination long enough to get in their time zone, if that makes sense. So you just kind of have to work that out as best you can. And then flying back home internationally from Hawaii to Melbourne, for example, was an early pickup, and then you got back into Melbourne kind of late in the afternoon, Melbourne time, and then I would typically just stay up throughout that day as long as I could, and then go to bed like at a semi-normal time, and then I'd kind of be back into Melbourne's time zone. So it's just a different fatigue on that aspect, whereas domestic, right now anyway, I'm doing like mornings, so typically starting around 6 a.m, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but 6 a.m. is probably the average starting time. So I'm getting up at say 5 a.m. For a 6 a.m. start. So obviously trying to get 8 hours sleep before that shift. You're going to bed at 9 p.m. the night before. So just working out your body clock and circadian rhythm. So in that part of it, your body is wanting to be asleep, typically within those hours. So it releases the most amount of melatonin to allow you to sleep at that time, or gives you the best chance to sleep. But 4 or 5 of those in a row, it's a different type of fatigue. Then you get home, get ready for the next day, and then do it again. So just a different type of fatigue, really is the simplest way to sort of answer that part of it. And then probably the last point to add, because I know this video has gone on for a while and I do tend to ramble, so apologies for that. But the last point to add, and probably the most obvious, is there is a pay difference between a captain or first officer on the narrow body and a captain first officer on the wide body. There's a whole lot of variables in this. I have done a video on that as well a few videos ago, comparing what my pay was going as a second officer to then comparing to what it was going to a first officer on the narrow body. As I mentioned, there's a lot of variables in that. So for example, on the wide body you get overnight allowances, so they pay for your hotel and then give you a certain amount of money to get food and everything like that while you're away. But I'm not going to go into that into this video because I've already covered that. But basically, base salary, you will get paid more as a captain or a first officer on the wide body as compared to a captain or first officer on the narrow body, obviously comparatively as well. So that's probably the last point to talk about in this video. As I said, I've only been flying domestically on the narrow body for 3 or 4 months, so my opinion could change as I obviously continue to fly the narrow body more and more. But right now, I guess I just wanted to answer that because I've been getting that question a lot, so I thought I'd do a video on that for you guys. But if you do have any other questions around comparing international to domestic flying as an airline pilot, comment them down below. I will answer them for you. But if you guys did like this video and did like obviously getting back into a bit more aviation, because the last few vlogs I've kind of been obviously about my wedding and everything like that. But if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up for me to let me know. And yeah, comment down below as well if you did like it. So I know that, you know, to keep the videos more consistent, I can sit down and do a video like this where there's no fancy vlog and everything like that, just discussing a topic and sort of my experiences being an airline pilot. So I'm sure I've rambled enough for today's video. Yeah, comment down if there is any other questions you want me to cover that you don't believe I sort of covered or answered in this video. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next video.